Welcome to Shape of the City. I'm Clover Frederick and I'll be your host. The cold weather has arrived and the holidays are approaching. To help us all get through safer this year, I'm joined today by Rick Campos, a fire inspector and investigator for the City of Lincoln, and Julie Anderson with Safe Kids Lincoln-Lancaster County. Thank you both for joining me today.
Oh, you're welcome.
Pleasure to be here.
Good. Well, let's start with Rick. What are some of the biggest home safety concerns during the colder winter months?
Yeah, colder winter brings on a few that I can think of. First of all, portable space heaters, portable heating, chimney fires, and probably candle fires would be the top three for the winter months that we're looking at.
Okay. And those are really the leading causes of fire then during the winter?
Yes, they are during the winter. During the year, it would be cooking, smoking, and electrical, but the winter brings on typically those three that we see.
Okay. Now tell us about the increased risk of carbon monoxide in the winter. Why the increase and how do families protect themselves?
Sure. Carbon monoxide is an off gas produced by when you burn fuel. So gas appliances, propane, something of that nature. And it's colorless, odorless, and you're going to get like a flu-like symptom. So it may be something that we're thinking that, hey, it may be a weather-related illness. And how we can protect ourselves and our families is to have a carbon monoxide detector. And that is typically that we're recommending that you have one on each floor and outside the sleeping areas. It works very similar to a smoke detector, but it just detects one gas only and will alert you, much like a smoke detector will, before those levels of carbon monoxide are dangerous for you and your family.
What should somebody do if their carbon monoxide detector goes off?
Sure, that's if your carbon monoxide detector alerts, you need to get out of the structure. Just like if your smoke detector goes off, you get out of the structure. You get to fresh air and then call 911 and they can come to your house, monitor, figure out is it some equipment failure or what's going on, and then they can get your services restored from them. But the first thing is get out of the structure, get yourself some fresh air, and safety that way.
Very good. Now, what are some other safety precautions that homeowners as well as landlords and renters, what can they take?
As far as carbon monoxide detection or as far
Just
as
safety in general?
Safety in general,
Yes.
okay. Well, back to the winter months, we're talking about candles and we're talking about space heaters as the other two causes of fires in the city. So on space heaters, what we like to do is plug that space heater directly into a wall outlet. Don't use extension cords or multiple extension cords, and then maintain a good safe distance. Typically we like to say about 3 foot from anything combustible. So if you have a space heater in your room, keep about 3 foot clearance from the bed or bed coverings or some items like that. The other thing is with candle safety, make sure that when you light candles, because of the holidays coming up, a lot of people like candles, the scents and what have you, but make sure that we keep the lighters and matches away from little children, and also again that we have that clearance from combustible items. That could be Christmas trees, that could be decorations or anything like that. So those are three good ways that we want to protect ourselves.
Now, what other advice do you have for our viewers when it comes to fire safety year-round?
Sure. Back to the winter again. We've already heard some chimney fires. So a lot of people like to use their fireplaces in the wintertime and get that ambiance and also for heating as well. So on the chimney fires, we want to make sure that we at least have that chimney inspected or cleaned once a year, especially if you're doing a lot of burning wood, because that chimney is going to produce some combustible material on the inside that's going to stick to the chimney. And if that's heated up, that could ignite a chimney fire. So in addition to the candles, the space heaters, and the carbon monoxide, having a chimney service would be a great idea too, as well as for your home furnaces. You know, that could also produce some carbon monoxide too, so that would be a good inspection too as well.
Okay. And then the rest of the year, you mentioned smoking and cooking and some other things. What are some precautions that people can take?
Yeah, smoking and cooking and electrical are the other three items. So cooking is pretty easy, and that is stay in the kitchen when you're cooking. Most of the kitchen fires we have are unattended, and it's easy to get distracted, you know, on your phone or watching TV, or something comes up with the kids and you leave. So number one, stay in the kitchen when you cook. Number two, with the smoking, is discard smoking materials in a non-combustible container. So we've seen cigarettes placed in flower pots or milk jugs and such forth. So make sure it's a non-combustible container, something that's not going to burn. Typically, we see fires around mulch piles around the house. So if you're going to discard cigarettes in that non-combustible container, at least 10 feet away from a structure. And then the electrical aspect is a lot of people like to use extension cords, and in place of an extension cord, we just ask that you use a power strip. And that's a device that you can plug into the wall. You can get maybe 6 different outlets. And it also has a safety feature that if it's sensing overcurrent, it shuts off, much like a breaker system in your house, electrical breaker. So those are some great precautions that people can take to protect themselves against fire, and also to practice a fire safety plan if you haven't done one yet. Maybe draw one out. Mm-hmm. This is the first way out of my house. This is the second way out. Where are we going to meet? And practice those, so if the emergency comes up, it's just like second nature to you.
Okay, very good. Now, if a viewer is concerned about carbon monoxide or in need of a smoke detector, what should they do? Who should they contact?
Smoke detectors with either, we have hard of hearing smoke detectors or your ones that you just put up on the ceiling. If you need help putting one up or one yourself, if you call Fire Administration at 441-7363, area code 402. That'll get you the administration. Give them your address and name, and they'll send the appropriate unit out to come and assist you on either putting that up on the ceiling or actually providing one for you.
Great. Okay, now, Julie, let's talk a little bit about Safe Kids.
All right.
So in a recent survey, 77% of parents considered their home to be safer than most. What can we take from that?
Well, most parents can't imagine that an injury is going to happen in their home, but the fact remains for kids between the ages of 1 and 4, that's where most injuries happen, and it happens even with the best of intentions for parents.
Mm-hmm. Now, with the holidays approaching, what should anyone hosting a get-together keep in mind, especially if there's going to be small children?
Well, with small children, flat screen TVs are around, football's on. If you have a very adventurous 4-year-old who likes to be active and climb, if that TV's not mounted to the wall or strapped on a small cabinet of some kind, there's a good chance injury could happen there. Remotes. Everybody has remotes. How many do we have in a house? Several, in several rooms. Flameless candles, toys that have small lithium batteries can be a real disaster to small children and be life-altering if they swallow them. And what do kids do? They take things apart. So it's easy for that to happen. Grandma and Grandpa are visiting. Grandma and Grandpa come with prescriptions that they need to take. Maybe at home they can leave them on the nightstand. They can leave them on the table because there aren't small people around. If they're around and they're pretty, little kids can, think that they're candy. So there are several things parents can do. Safe Kids has a checklist. They can go to www.safekidslincoln.org, and there's a home safety checklist. It's a good idea for people to kind of peruse that occasionally to see what maybe they can do to protect their kids a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a great suggestion. Now, you mentioned lithium batteries. What other sort of gifts that children should get that we might want to be concerned about?
Well, certainly age appropriate. Parents are always looking at things like, wouldn't that be cool to have? Really look at the toy that you think you want to buy for your child. Read the instructions. Go online if you have to. Read the instructions, read the warnings. And make sure it's age appropriate. A 3-year-old doesn't need a battery operated remote truck, to play with. And people need to really consider that when they're purchasing gifts.
Now, what other safety precautions do you have for us during the winter?
Outside, we want kids to play outside. We're talking about physical activity. It's great. It's good to be outside. Dress in layers for sure. We don't get a lot of snow, but it gets cold. So dress in layers, hats and gloves all the time. Make sure the kids come in once in a while for water because they can get dehydrated pretty easily. And certainly sunblock is even needed in the wintertime in Nebraska because the sun can burn you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and giving us some winter safety tips. I appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. When we return, we'll learn more about a community initiative helping to educate young children.
Kids, get off your phone. You need to pay attention to the road. Or else, there might be tar, or wet cement, or a car. Please, get off your phone, or you might end up with a broken bone. Your phone may seem like it's all that, but staying alive is where it's at.
Welcome back to Shape of the City. Every child deserves an equal opportunity to succeed, no matter their background. It's a wonderful concept, but not an easy one to necessarily achieve. That is where the community comes in. Michelle Suarez, developer for the Early Childhood Program with Prosper Lincoln, will fill us in on their initiative to improve the future for children throughout our community. Thank you for joining us, Michelle.
Oh, I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, well, let's get started. First of all, tell us what Prosper Lincoln is and how did it get started?
Prosper Lincoln is a community agenda. It really isn't a program. Or an organization. It's an initiative. And it really started after the recession of 2008. And I think in about 2011, people came together and kind of said, what is the state of our community and how can we improve it? So there was something called Vital Signs. And Vital Signs came out in 2014-15 and really shared with the community that things are going very well for many people in Lincoln, but there are also some people in Lincoln who are struggling. And so because of that report and the interested and caring community, leaders in our community came together and really followed a process to be able to get ideas for how we could improve our community so that everyone prospered and was healthy. And so out of over 2,000 ideas, through a narrowing process, we came up with three concepts. And one is early childhood development, another is employment skills, and the other is innovation and entrepreneurship. So I am the early childhood developer, and it's just been a pleasure to get out in the community. I've been at this job for about 4 months and learned just a great context of the early childhood community, and knowing that we have a lot of work to do.
Well, tell us more about this early childhood pillar of Prosper Lincoln.
Well, we have, of course, our mission is to make sure that every child gets what he or she needs to have a healthy start so that they can prosper in Lincoln. And we have a strategic plan, and it can be summarized in 3 words, and that is educate, advocate, and transform. So in the education piece, we want everyone in our community to know the importance of the early years. That's when children are laying the very foundation for their future. And we also want our community to see what we invest in early childhood as a community asset. So to the degree that we can invest in our children, we're going to be a healthier and more prosperous Lincoln. We also want to remind our community that it's important to read aloud to kids, because that is the single most important thing that people can do to create literacy and lifelong learning in children. So that's the education piece. And then once we get to the education piece, we believe that we want to and we must create advocates for this work. And advocates from the business community, because then once we have the business community integrated into this work, then that becomes the very fabric of our community. So we want to create a business roundtable so that we can get those champions and influencers to affect a lot of different aspects of our community. And the other piece is creating an early childhood network. And that can be done in a couple of, ways of doing that. And one is creating a partnership and an avenue so that the people who are actually doing the work, providing the early childhood care and development, that they can come together and really support one another, advocate for each other, advocate for this work in the community. We also see it happening at a cross-sector level. So we have business, education, providers, our anchor institutions, our government, our community members coming together to advocate for this work because we know it's so important. So once we educate and advocate, then we also want to transform. We need more capacity for quality early childhood care and development in our city. Right now, about 2/3 of our most vulnerable kids do not get high-quality services. And so we know that that's the single most important thing we can do to create their health and well-being. We also want to gear our community to early childhood care and development so that any kind of event that we might go to, that there's something for children, young children to learn and participate in. And then the other is we really need to attend to the basic needs of our families with young children. And that could be as simple as how do you care for a crying baby, a colicky baby, to could be housing, it could be food, it could be clothing. So we really want to create a community care about our families with young children so that our young children are healthy, because that is when we can make the biggest difference, when our kids are young.
Yeah, very good. Well, tell us more about the health piece of this, since we are talking about health here on Shape of the City.
Yes.
How does what you're going to be doing with early childhood, how does that affect the health of our community?
Well, the health really is the foundation for any one person, and we know that when children are young, that is when we can make the biggest impact. Children are born with just looking at their world and learning so much, and so if we give them the proper nutrition, proper movement, proper care, proper socialization, they're going to be much healthier. It makes a difference, because if kids are healthy, then they can go on to learn and then reach their hopes and dreams. Our goal is to make sure that every child is kindergarten ready, which means that they're ready cognitively, socially, emotionally, physically to learn and what they need to learn to be successful. About half of our kids are reported to not coming to school ready for kindergarten because of behavior or cognitive, social, emotional kinds of issues. And so once they come to kindergarten, it's already late. And we do everything we can in schools to remediate and to give children what they need. But if we would only do that in the early years, it would be much more effective and much more efficient, not for our community in terms of services, but also for the children themselves, because then they're able to get what they need to continue to grow and prosper.
What do you see as some of the biggest challenges to meeting this mission?
Well, there are multiple challenges, and one is even the prestige and the wages that we pay the child care professionals. And I think you might have heard, or people might have heard, that child care professionals make about $19,000 per year on average, which for a family of 4 would put them in the poverty range. And that is not sustainable for our child care professionals. We also know that we seem to think, in general, that perhaps we don't revere our child care professionals as we should. And so we might revere the college professor. And yet we really need to revere the early childhood professional as well, because they're doing some of the most important work, very challenging work. So that's one piece. The other piece is the cost for early childhood care and development. A lot of our families are in the workforce, both mom and dad, or mom or dad if they're in a single family household. And so we need to be able to provide some kind of policy to be able to help support our families. It's been said that the cost of childcare is about the cost of the tuition and fees at a college of higher learning. And so we need to be able to think about how can we provide quality and provide care so that our children get what they need. But it's not an easy solution, because again, we need to be able to pay our child care professionals more. We also need to be able to invest more in helping parents get what they need to be able to make sure that their kids get what they need.
So tell me what successes you've seen so far, and are there any success stories you can share with us?
Yes. Well, what I know about the people that I've been talking to and our early child care professionals is that there's just tremendous passion in the work that they do. They just come, and their mission is to impact the lives of our young children. And so seeing the work that they do has been absolutely inspiring. A little bit of a challenge, but also a story. I was talking with one center director, and he talked about that it's hard for families to be able to pay for child care. And so a family that he spoke to me about was receiving some subsidy from the federal government to be able to provide that care, but they still had a family fee to pay, and they weren't able to pay that family fee. And so that was a struggle for the mom. The child care provider had to struggle with, how do we pay the bills? And so that was very challenging. Do you say, sorry, this child can't come to this quality place for care? We know that the child needs it, the mom's looking for a job. And it was hard for the mom to look the child care provider in the eye, because she was so embarrassed that she couldn't pay for her portion of it. The child care director did stay with the mom, and the child was able to continue attending, but it's just that very tenuous balance of trying to make sure that our families can afford what they need to pay for child care, and that our kids get what they need. And so it's very challenging. But again, back to the passion of seeing how our child care professionals are providing for kids. It's very inspiring. And the other piece of that is, in the community, there's so much support. And I think there's a sense of, what can I do? How can I support this work? I think that Nebraskans do know, and Lincolnites do know, the importance of it. But once we know the importance, and if we know the importance, then what are we willing to invest? And that has to be the final question then. How much are we willing to give to this work so that our child care providers and professionals get professional wages and that our kids get what they need?
Now, if we have viewers today who are interested in learning more or giving back and being part of the process, what should they do?
Well, they should check the website for as a starting place. It's prosperlincoln.org, and there are a variety of ways to get involved. There's always donations for a variety of opportunities to impact the lives of young children. But there's also just a myriad of ideas in terms of whether you're a community member, faith-based, just a variety of, there's just so many ideas listed that can get people thinking about how they can be involved. So I would first ask that they go there. And the other thing is there are just so many resources. So if people want to find out what about the early years, they can go to the Center for the Young Child at Harvard University, or they can look up James Heckman, because we know it's just so much more efficient and effective to invest when kids are young than it is later.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing with us today.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Good. Now, when we return, we're going to learn about how to stay healthy during those cold winter months.
What if you could add 5 years to your child's life and make your whole family healthier with simple changes? Partnership for Healthy Lincoln wants to help you and your family live longer, healthier lives. It's easier than you think. Take the dog for a walk, play more and text a little less. Swap out a soda for water once a day. Keep fruits and veggies handy for snacking. For more ideas, visit healthylincoln.org.
Hello, this is Dr. Bob Rauner from Partnership for Healthy Lincoln. We're here today to talk about some ideas to stay a little more active and a little healthier over the winter holidays and maybe stave off some weight gain. Sometimes because of the cold and bad weather, there's other ways where you can do more activity inside. A couple options, some people will go to the mall. There's a lot of square footage that people can walk through. That's a nice place to walk. Downtown, people sometimes use the state capitol building, where if it's nice outside, they'll do the circumference of the building. And if it's not, then they'll walk on the inside around the outer chambers. Just because it's cold outside doesn't mean you can't go outside. Make sure you got an inner layer, an insulating layer, and a wind breaking layer. And usually you can stay warm, make sure the gloves are on, things like that. A lot of people are moving to things like step counters. Goal is to get about 10,000 steps a day, and it's a nice, easy way to monitor yourself. And it's getting easier to do. A lot of smartphones now have a step counter. A lot of people are using things like Fitbits or even just a waist clip-on step counter. Is a good way to just kind of track your activity over time to make sure you're staying fit and healthy. Another reason to consider staying active and being outside is that some of us get kind of the winter blues. We have shorter days. Sometimes your work day means you leave home and it's dark, and you get home and it's dark again. So walking over the lunch hour, the sunlight will actually do you a little good. If you're out for a long time, you still need to consider sunscreen, but the sunlight will help keep you a little more alert, a little more active. There are some good studies on seasonal affective disorder where people get a mild degree of depression over the winter, and some bright light can help with that, and getting outside is one way to do that. One thing that people forget over the winter is you still need to drink water even though it's cold outside. People think if I'm hot and sweaty, of course I need to drink, but sometimes when it's cold you need to drink as well. One of the reasons is that your furnace tends to dry out the air in your house. You need to still stay well hydrated for that reason. Also, if you drink plenty of water, you're less likely to overeat, which is kind of a problem with all the holiday gatherings where everybody brings a dish, and it's really hard not to just go back for more and more. If you intersperse with glasses of water, that tends to keep your stomach a little full, so you're just less likely to overeat. Well, hopefully some of these tips will help you a little bit over the winter. This is Dr. Bob Rauner from Partnership for Healthy Lincoln. If you want to learn more, you can always go to healthylincoln.org.
Shape of the City is dedicated to helping Lincoln stay informed of health and wellness topics and events. Visit our calendar at lincoln.ne.gov, keyword 10health. If you'd like to see your event covered, email us at 10healthlincoln@gmail.com. Thank you for watching. Until next time, get active, eat healthy, and stay informed.